Hello, good afternoon. Happy Wednesday. Okay, just checking. We are in the throes of hall closing here at the University of Cincinnati, so I had to double check what day of the week it was. So welcome, everyone. So glad to see so many people on this call. This is fantastic. We're excited for so many people to be interested and excited for this topic. My name is Michelle Soika, and I am at the University of Cincinnati. I'm an assistant director for facility operations in our housing office, and I also get the pleasure of serving as co-chair of the Women in Housing Network alongside Deanna. And so I'm going to turn over to Deanna to do a quick introduction of herself.
Hello. Good day, everyone. Good to see and or hear you all's voices over time, but Deanna Hughes. I have the pleasure of serving as an assistant director for conduct and care at Florida State University's Tallahassee campus. Also have the immense pleasure of being able to co-chair our ACUHO-I Women in Housing Network alongside Michelle. I'm excited to see you all and looking forward to what Kate and Lacey will be sharing with us today.
Yes. So we invite you all, if you're interested in turning your camera on, we welcome you to do so. Also recognize that it may be lunch hour for some folks if you're on the West Coast. So, so know that either option is totally fine as we engage in this space today. I'm very excited to introduce our panelists, Kate Gannon-Cullinan. Sorry, Kate.
Nailed it.
And Lacey South. Oh my gosh, where'd you go? Where are you on my screen? There you are, Southwick. Sorry, Lacey. I lost you on my screen for a second. So they're going to introduce themselves, share a little bit about their journey to their role, and then we'll jump into some questions. We do have some pre-planned questions, but please feel free to raise your hand in the setting, unmute yourself, or put questions that you might have in the comment section, and we will absolutely be taking a look at those and add your questions into the mix. So I will turn over to Lacey.
All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Lacey Southwick, Assistant Director of Housing Operations at Florida State University. Just a quick rundown of my journey through student affairs. This June will be 15 years in student affairs for me. I started as a hall director at Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee for a couple years. I was the assistant director at the Art Institute of Nashville for a couple of years, and then I moved on to a private institution, very small school in the southwest corner of Virginia, Emory-Henry College, as their director of residence life and housing for about 3 years there. While I was there, as many of you know, if you're at a smaller campus, you wear multiple hats and do a lot of different things. And while I was there, I became more involved in our student conduct process and our Title IX process, and became a Title IX investigator and sexual misconduct hearing officer. So then that work really intrigued me and wanted to do more in that work, which is what led me here to Florida State. Actually came here as a Title IX investigator and was in that role for about 3.5 years. Definitely had some interesting nuances with COVID, as we all did, and juggling that work with COVID. And then after some hard thinking and discussions, I decided I needed to get back to my roots with housing. That's my wheelhouse. That's my love. It's my passion. So oddly enough, at the same time, a position here opened up, and here I am. I've been here in this role for about 1.5 years now. So that's me.
So hello, everyone. Kate Gannon-Cullinan over at LSU. Louisiana State University, sorry, in the Baton Rouge campus. I have enjoyed moving across the country several times in my career. I'm just super good at packing, which is why I'm in operations. And so I am from outside Chicago originally. I got my start at a small D3 school, and then hopped over to Washington State. I spent 2 different tours at Washington State in different capacities. Worked at Old Dominion University in Virginia, Northwestern in Chicago, Loyola Chicago, just kind of all over. And did a little bit of housing assignments when I was up in Chicago as well. And that kind of got me really interested in the operational side of things, and strategic's my #1 strength. So I really love putting all those puzzle pieces together. And that's how I ended up at LSU. It was just time for my partner and I to kind of see where we wanted to go. I've married into the South, and so they were tired of living in snow. And so that brought us to Baton Rouge. I've been here for about 5 years now, and I started as the associate for staffing and operations and now have moved into just residential operations. So I still do our professional staffing, but I've had a lovely assistant director who does the student staffing portion of that now. So it's more sustainable. So I get to do all of our recruitment and operational planning, which are my two favorite things as a strategic woo. And so, yeah, that is my energy. I love seeing other people succeed, and I love creating processes that folks can just really thrive in and find like empowerment and leadership and success. And I love being that kind of behind the scenes person to do that. Good to be here.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. So I'm just going to start with some summer conferences. I'm sure many of your campuses have summer conferences or some variation of it. So we're going to jump into questions there. Again, I invite you to throw questions into the chat section, or if you want to unmute and ask questions, you are absolutely welcome to do that as well. But if you all could start us, Kate and or Lacey, start us off with, how do summer conferences support the overall mission of your institution, or maybe past institutions as well?
Go for it, Lacey.
All right. Well, our summer conference program really focuses on, making sure we have a great satisfactory experience. Our mission with the university, involves research and giving those opportunities for, potential students and students to engage in all the different areas. Trying to remember all of the mission of the institution versus the mission of my department and whatnot. And there's a lot of blending there as well. We do. I feel like with our particular housing program for summer conferences, it really is geared towards non-students. So not currently enrolled students, but potentially enrolled students, whether they are almost of college age or even as a young minor youth student who comes here for an athletic camp and has a really great time. And then remembers back later that they attended this awesome camp at Florida State University and wants to come back and explore whatever majors and programs that we have to offer there. So we really use our summer conferences as a recruiting tool in a sense as well. So making sure that we're providing safe and healthy environments for our students as well as our guests to live in over the summer months. As well as, just making sure that our customer service is top notch with these teams. We have several legacy clients that we call our legacy clients that have been here for 10 plus years that continue to come back because of the programs that they're affiliated with. So I'm sure that there have been many students that participated in those programs that are now current students or past FSU students, and their family just keeps passing down from generation to generation. So I think that's really important to consider when you're running a program like that, like what it looks like to outsiders that aren't a part of your program already. So how can you instill in those potential new families that you're reaching that this is the place for them, this is going to be a great experience for them, and keeping that in mind as well.
Yeah, I to kind of springboard, I think the recruitment piece is crucial, right? And with that, I mean, we hosted NACUR in 2019, so like my first full summer here. And I still have candidates that I bring to campus that were here in some capacity and remembered Baton Rouge and remembered the fun time that they had. And so even like employee candidates recruitment, that's a huge piece. And you never know, right? You never know what that reach is going to be. I think with the recruitment, it's also the community engagement and how does your institution work within the community that it's in, and serving like LSU is our flagship land grant institution here in the capital city. And so how do we engage in those types of relationships politically, in terms of the socioeconomic pieces of our community and our campus, and public education systems and things like that. And so that's a huge overall support for our institution. Is there's a few different select programs that also springboard pieces of retention and persistence in students from high school into that first year of college. And so there are a couple of unique programs that we work with on our enrollment management side, and that supports those overall missions of expansion of access while still providing student support to be successful at the institution. Also, there's some financial pieces, obviously, right? The summer conferences help support different positions over the summer, custodial services over the summer, and being able to continuously employ those roles and having things You know, since you whittle down probably a lot of your housing operations to just certain buildings, but being able to continue to employ your entire staff in that vein through conference flipping of rooms is an important employee management piece. And then we also, you know, have some P3 partnerships in terms of buildings, and we have certain obligations of a certain level of occupancy throughout the academic year. And so having conferences and summer housing allows us to kind of shift some of those, or some short courses academically. But really, I know this isn't a conference technically, but the summer housing and how that supports continued enrollment in summer classes, is that's continuing to be, you know, pushed and helpful for students that had to kind of maybe step away for a minute and then still want to stay on track. We have a big part in that as well in the summer.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, Kate, I think you started to head down that path. So I'm going to ask the question around sort of staff involvement, housing and residence life staff involvement over the course of the summer. What does that look like on your campuses for summer conferences? I know personally I've been at different institutions where it's looked very different across responsibility and engagement. I would love to learn a little bit more about your campuses.
Yeah, I can start on this one if you're okay, Lacey. So we have, and we've done some intentional work to create positions that directly manage conferences and guest services throughout the year to kind of expand our business, right? I think we were working to do that, and then COVID hit, and then we're like, no conferences for no one. And so now we're trying to kind of get back into how do we increase our reach in the community and the state or nearby states to kind of bring folks to campus and bring in more revenue. And so we have an assistant director who is in charge of conference services. I'm filling in some of her amazing work today because she's out. And then she also has a coordinator that helps her in that, and that's a brand new position for the summer. And we always in Res Ed, I feel like, you know, we've got more staff, right? Because during the year, we're managing more things. And so in the summer, we have summer opportunities that we have our staff kind of preference, and then we place folks with different offices in our department. So we'll put a couple folks with assignments, a couple with summer conferences, with facilities, and they kind of help do some key work and key box audits and things. And so we allow our in-house staff, grads and pros, to kind of get different experiences. And a lot of it tends to be operations in the summer. And so we have 2.5, I say 2.5 because one's a grad that's taking classes, so they can only work half time. So 2.5 folks will be working to support summer conferences. And so they'll help supervise conference assistants, which are typically RAs, and kind of working in a different capacity and learning a different functional area, which I did twice as a live-in RC, and why I got really into operations is because I had those opportunities as summer collaterals.
So at Florida State, we do have our own conference service program, and I have a coordinator that works full-time throughout the year that oversees that program. She also will oversee our interns and all of the student staff that we hire, the conference assistants that are over that program throughout the summer. Additionally, like as far as with our head staff and coordinator staff, they have different roles throughout the summer. So we have half of our buildings will be occupied with summer school students, and the other half are designated to conferences and camps. And then this year we only have 2 buildings that will be offline for some major renovation projects that are going on. Otherwise, of our 18 different buildings, they're all functional except for the 2 that will be offline. So they never really have a moment to rest or do any of that, you know, other big work that we might need to get done. But the coordinator staff is also working on different things. There's staff that's working with our orientation department and helping manage that. There's staff working desk operations within the halls that are occupied for summer school students, running those desk operations, you know, handling work orders that are going to be submitted, things like that, you know, just that general first point of contact in the hall. And we also have student or coordinators that are working with our academic initiatives and leadership as well. And then of course, a group that is planning RA training and professional staff training throughout the summer also. So they do keep busy, and that does encompass professional staff and graduate student staff as well that will join later in the summer when they'll be here. Our, you know, and this might be a little bit of facilities talk, but also operations with conferences. And our, university, we have our facilities folks and custodial staff do not report directly to housing. They now report to central facilities. They used to be under the housing umbrella, but there was a blending of our facilities and custodial departments probably about two and a half years ago, thereabouts. So having to work through some of those growing pains of learning the different partners that you need to talk about these room flips and to talk about the things that need to get done before your move-ins for summer start, before your conference guests get there. It's a very large coordinated effort of communication across the board. So that's, knowing who your key players are and getting involved with that. That's really what I do with my supervisor as the director of operations. That's what we're doing. We're playing the puzzle piece builder and building the puzzle to make sure that everything will work so that when students arrive and conference guests arrive, we are prepared and ready for them, and they wouldn't know if we were chaotic and whatnot. Behind the scenes, it just looks like everything was perfect when they showed up, right? And that's the perfect world. Everything is working, water's working everywhere, everybody has air conditioning, right? That's how it works. But obviously, having to work through that and troubleshoot, that's what we're doing. But our conference staff will manage just those buildings, and summer school under our housing umbrella will work with just those buildings. So that's how that's working with that staffing. And then in terms of different roles for me managing the conference program, I do more of like the helping out with the contracts and billing a portion of that, whereas my coordinator is doing the staff training, the hiring of them, the supervising, and working directly with the client in terms of, how many beds do we need to reserve, things like that, kind of going through those.
Awesome. Love it. Just want to remind folks, if you have questions for our amazing panelists, please feel free to put those in the chat. We would love to hear what you want to hear from them as well. Lacey started heading that direction, so I'm going to keep going around flips and turns. And I feel like sometimes we talk about gymnastics when we start to think about getting our rooms ready for whoever the next occupant is. Can you all talk a little bit through what that process looks like? Who are your key players on your campus? How do you communicate that and stay organized? I know that's a very loaded question, so tackle as much or as little as you want there.
That is a loaded question. For us, we have a lot of key players, and a lot of it, our occupancy and housing assignments team is very vital to this, as well as working with our partners over in facilities and custodial. We start gathering information from students who are going to be here for the summer months, probably like right after spring break time. And then we're getting those updates of, when they have signed their summer contract, we're getting, these are the students who are living in current buildings that will be transitioning to our summer buildings. So we have those students that we have to kind of transition and get. They are our priority spaces to be cleaned as soon as closing happens. And so we will have custodial staff here on closing day dealing with the move out trash and, the overflowing dumpsters we all have and things like that. And then they'll come back on Sunday and they'll be starting to flip these rooms so that our students that are transitioning over for summer school will have a clean space to move into. So those will be priority. And then how that works is we just get an updated list weekly. Sometimes here in the next week or so, we'll probably get one every other day, just having those rooms and what rooms are priority. And it's our job, my job, to work with facilities to say, here's the rooms that you all need to go in and flip. If we need to do touch-up paint, we need to do whatever maintenance work that needs to be done, fixing any major damages that are in there. And then also, making sure that our custodial staff has the list of rooms that need to be hit as well. So they like for our facilities crew to go through first, and then for custodial to clean up after them, because sometimes, they leave some things behind at times, kind of helping manage that. Then once they get through those initial flips in those couple of days, because our closing is on May 6th and then move in for summer students begins on the 11th of May. So we only get a couple of days to flip these first initial transitional rooms. This year, I'm also told that we are up by about, like 50% more student summer contracts than we were last year. So we're very tight on summer space, which last year there was a little bit more breathing room, but most of these students won't be moving in until I'm looking for like mid-June for our next summer session that will start. So initially we're probably flipping 250 rooms in the very beginning, and then we'll do the rest of them after that initial flip happens. And then our first conference groups start arriving on May 22nd. So then they have, a couple hundred rooms they got to get ready for that as well. Also, just for context, we have 6,700 beds on campus. So like I said, about 50% of that will be summer school and the rest is for summer conferences. But it is a coordinated effort. It's, we meet in person, we'll send emails throughout the day, kind of updating. But really, it's just managing those relationships and building those relationships with those folks so that it's easier to have that done. I think for us, the saving grace here was that a lot of these people that are on our facilities and custodial team were a part of the housing operation before our blend happened. So they definitely understand the halls. They know what needs to get done. They know the order that it needs to get done, and they understand the importance of why it needs to get done when it needs to be done. We've maintained those relationships with those key players so that even though they don't directly report to our staff, they understand the expectation and they want to serve our students and serve our students well. So I think that's really important, that they know why they're here. It's not just a job for them, for some of them perhaps, but for the ones that have been around for a long time, that's really, they're here to serve the students and they enjoy the students. Because without our students, none of us would have a reason to come show up for work every day. But those key players that are in our facilities and custodial area have really help deliver the message to the leadership within facilities of the importance of why this needs to be done. And much like Kate was saying earlier, like that's not going to work for our students if we do it this way, because they may not think of that in the moment, just how impactful or how invasive their work may be, which is why we have to stand up and advocate for our students when they're saying we want to shut the water off or we need to shut this down. And it's like, you're right in the middle of exam week. I think, how can we, unless it's an emergency, how can we maybe have a contingency plan to get to that right after closing? But, let's not interrupt their studies, let them focus and do what they need to do. So.
Yeah, I think if there's advice I can give to folks about working in operations, it's really that you have to be thinking like 3 steps down the road. It's like playing Sudoku where you're like, cool, 2 fits here, but maybe it doesn't yet because actually it needs to go in this other part of that row. And so like you could solve one problem and then you've created another. So I think in terms of like, how do you stay organized? We start as like our departmental key players, so our director for housing and facilities, our director for occupancy, things like that. We start meeting in November to start forecasting summer projects, right? What deferred maintenance absolutely has to happen. We pushed off fixing this roof for more years than we care to admit publicly, right? And so like, what do we really got to do, right? And what's possible? Okay, so last summer we thought we were going to have to explode a building. We were able to take it down brick by brick instead. And so we had shifted all of our conference operations to the east side of campus, used that dining hall because we thought the dust radius of demolishing this building was going to be quite impactful. That ended up not being the case. So what it allowed us to do was do some deferred maintenance on the west campus, and we focused our operation on the east. Now we're doing the opposite. And so, but that takes, not just planning in a meeting, but then also bids for some of that work that's going to be more expensive at a state institution, and even at private institutions, you have to bid certain amounts of money. And so some of those projects, we might want to repaint every apartment in this community, but we don't have the money for it, or the bid didn't get through in time. And so there's a lot of that goes on with our housing facilities team. And I kind of try to help serve as the flight control for all the different departments, and then my staff that'll carry out all of these processes. And so like some of our key players at LSU is a big one that I work with daily every summer is athletics. So they do preseason for football with us right in the beginning of August when we're rolling into RA training and things like that. And so that's a huge factor. But also throughout the summer, they're having their new recruits coming in for various sports. And with NIL, there's a different expectation level of like what that pomp and circumstance looks like for incoming athletes. And their housing and having it be more of a spectacle in terms of their arrival, even though it's kind of off center and not in our big to-do move-in day. And so that's a big piece for us. We obviously are working with our maintenance and custodial staff. And we actually, once we get into conference season, we'll have weekly conference meetings. And me and my assistant director for staffing, who does the front desk coordination, will meet as a representative of the resident education team. And we meet with all the custodians that are working conferences. So if our conference staff needed to switch a building last minute, they can talk through that and pause like waxing timelines that they were doing and what we thought was a closed building and now we need to use or things like that. And so everyone is literally sitting there in first person and hearing that information and talking through barriers, and it allows us to work really efficiently in the summer for that. And we are also tight on summer spaces. And that's, we try to really prioritize folks who are enrolled and have continued contracts with us. Is like the priority. It's like you're enrolled for the summer and you're living with us in the fall. Then you're enrolled for this, and I think then it's you're living with us and living with us in the fall, and then it's enrolled but not living with us. So it's kind of like this tier of priority for summer housing. But one thing I think in terms of key players is our RA staff and my in-hall staff that are running those summer operations and conferences, and making sure, especially for summer RAs, it's a completely different job. It's a significantly different job. And so my training with summer RAs is your job is to be on call and manage occupancy and check-ins and check-outs, right? We're not doing all kinds of big programs and intentional interactions. It's much more operation focused. And so I really need them to be like knowledgeable of how to do a check-in and a check-out and what to look for and, and things like that. And so we're doing some marginal improvement on some of that training this summer to really go through some of that and do like a little BCDs of checking out a room and kind of like a highlights of, did you miss this charge, or did you see that this was filthy and we need to charge for cleaning and things like that. So yeah, a lot of key players that are going to carry out the day-to-day work and having those specialized trainings have been helpful for us.
Ooh, busy summers. Lots of humans. So I'm curious then too, like as you are having lots of humans coming onto campus, coming on and off campus, depending on if they're summer school or summer conference guests, what does like preventative maintenance look like on your campuses, right? Having to get into occupied spaces and tackling some of those maybe larger projects over the course of the summer in preparation for an academic year, but also while still having lots of occupancy over the summer.
Well, it certainly makes it tricky, of course. I think, the big thing is we sit down with our facilities directors and see about what work really needs to get done. When's the last time things were done? I have a large Excel file that my supervisor and I affectionately called the Holy Grail, that has all of the different tabs of things that we need to do, things that are on a rotation basis, things that are coming up, things like duct cleaning, soft washing of the buildings, things like that. We also have elevator modifications that have to be done to be in compliance with state statutes, generator testing that has to happen, which is happening weekly, sometimes monthly, depending on the building. Your every 30, 60, 90-day air filter replacements and your air handler units that have to be changed, things like that. So it encompasses all of that, plus our capital planning projects, which are the larger, big picture things that are being done. So some of that and how that works is more or less like what's going to be the least invasive over the summer, but also being able to take off some of our buildings if possible to do some of more of the heavy work that needs to be done. Just the way that funding works sometimes, and when you get your bids in or when you get your POs done, is it happening this fiscal year or is it happening next fiscal year? So, or, and I'm sure we've all seen this on our campuses with COVID, the prices of product and material are increasing, supply and demand is awful. You can't get a lot of contractors that are either overbooked or they don't have enough staff to help you get what you need done in the time frame. Because, we're asking for these large things and then we're like, oh, and by the way, you only have 8 weeks to complete this task before the students are here and we're starting this whole thing over again. So, we have a building this year that's going to be offline for the first 6 weeks of summer, that this will now be the third summer that we've had work going on in this building because it's just taken that long to get all of the insides taken care of, all of our mechanical work and things like that. Things the students can't see. So you tell them you've now spent millions of dollars in trying to improve this building with their air handlers and HVACs and things like that. But they're like, but that's furniture's still the same, or the carpet's still the same. And, like we can't have everything, but you have air conditioning. So let's be thankful for that, those kinds of things. And then, we we had money set aside for a larger project in another building, which didn't get all of the I's dotted and T's crossed in time, which was fine because it allowed us to kind of pivot and go to another building that we're able to now give an internal facelift for. We're doing new flooring, new carpeting, new paint, new furniture in the lobby areas and things like that. That's kind of going to refresh it. So when students come back, they're not going to recognize that space, but that gave us that breathing room to be able to do that. Some more of the other preventative maintenance things, like, so our soft wash for the outsides of the buildings are on like a 5-year rotation. So working with facilities and making sure that we've hit all of those buildings that need to be done. Like, we actually had, I think, 7 or 8 buildings that needed to be done this summer, which was going to take a long time. So we actually started this back over the Thanksgiving break. So when the halls were closed during break season, we were able to get out one hall then, and then I think they did 2 more in the winter break period as well. So just to kind of help alleviate some of that, so the students weren't feeling like all they were doing was walking through water, trying to get to and from classes over the summer. You know, kind of things like that. Other things, elevator modifications and things. Again, if you use those fancy words and students hear elevator modification, they think when they open up the elevator, it's going to look different. There's going to be murals of pictures and things. We have very basic elevators at FSU, which we're looking to get into fancier elevators. But again, that comes with the cost of turning of, can we do this, or do we need to do that? And, you know, what's most important and what's going to benefit the student the most. But really that, you know, and again, that's behind closed doors, literally with the elevator of what the modernization looks like. And all it is just to make sure that we're within compliance of building code and Florida state statute and things like that. So I think being able to show students and let them know, like, these are the things that are happening, and we can talk operations language to them all day long, but unless they can see a change for them, they're not going to notice really a difference. So with the air filters, our preventative maintenance team, they go in every 30, 60, 90 days, depending on the hall that needs to change filters, and they will continue that work throughout the summer. We just will give our students and our guests a heads up before they come. Our students are familiar with it. They're used to the preventative maintenance team that's coming through and changing those out, but our clients, our conference guests may not be as familiar. So we'll make sure that we have signage posted so that if they see these folks coming in, they're aware of why they're there and things like that. So just kind of doing a little things like that to communicate with your guest and with your students goes a long way when it comes to preventative maintenance that might be invasive in their room while it's occupied.
Yeah, second, the communication for sure. As early and as often as you can do that. And I think our team does a good job of like looping me in of like, hey, we're going to shut the water off in these buildings. Anybody there? Because there's no residents there, but we still have like live-in staff that are living there, right? My hall directors are still there, and making sure that I can then give them access to a different bathroom nearby if that's going to be what that needs. So that communication is key. I agree. I think really in terms of balancing preventative maintenance with occupancy, it's really about being creative. So like I said earlier, we started having those initial meetings in the fall about what are buildings that we're going to need offline and how long, right? So if we're, updating a boiler in a building or something, and we know that we're going to be able to get that because we've made the purchase throughout the academic year to be able to get ready for install right when we close, then we know we just can't put conferences in that building until maybe July, right? So any June conferences, we're going to give a couple week wiggle room because we always want to do that, right? So that then we can still use that building for revenue generating purposes later after that stuff is done, if that's possible or not. And really we try to have everything wrapped up by the end of July, knowing that August, that first 2 weeks before we get to move in operations, we're going to need to switch our attention into preparing for opening versus summer preventative maintenance. And so it's really, I think, about scheduling out and being creative, and how can do you have a camp that really wants this building, because that's the building they've been in for years, but they have to have preventative maintenance. How does your conference team then kind of sell them on, hey, we can't do this building, but we can do this building, and here's some cool highlights to this, or can you throw in a laundry package, for the 1 year that they're going to be at, like, so kind of really being creative in terms of those sales piece, and our comms and conference team are really, really excellent at that. And I said earlier, right, like, are there things you can purchase during the academic year so you're ready? So we're doing new key boxes for all of our halls. So they're all like uniforms, so the key audits are able to go more efficiently. And so we bought those. I went around with some facilities folks and did measurements and like, here's what this community can fit in their key closet and which one this one can't, and things like that, and have a whole spreadsheet, and they're all purchased, and we're starting the labels now so that when we close, my 2 staff members that are working for keys this summer can go and start getting those installed over the summer, so that when we get to August, like, it's already done and we're not scrambling. And so I think it's just really about forecasting and then being creative and open-minded too. It's not all summer, but maybe here instead. So, and yes to elevators.
We're in the thick of hall closing, and we had a facility meeting this morning, and I was like, we got elevator support this weekend, right?
Right? Yep.
Got elevator support. It's the question.
Move in and move out, always got to have. Yep.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thanks. I know, you know, it's so vital that we're continuing to improve and take care of our facilities over the summer. And yet we also have these other priorities over the summer. So appreciate you both sharing what some of those summer opportunities are for taking care of our facilities or improving our facilities. I know we have a very active summer on my campus as well. So I was like, hire all the humans because we need all the help. So well, let's be optimistic. And you know, I know a lot of us are getting to the hall closing time. We're thinking about all the great things that are happening and the rigor happening on our campuses over the summer, but also move-in is a very heavy summer intense planning time period. So Kate, I know that's an area that you have a lot of focus on your campus. So maybe you can start us off with sort of what does the role of communication and marketing play in a successful move-in operation, especially over the course of a summer?
Yes, this is my Super Bowl of student affairs is move-in day. So the 3 of us that plan move-in day at LSU is myself, our associate director for communications. So she does all of our brand management, communication with parents, all that kind of stuff. And then our assistant director for conferences. And so, and she's on there because she manages a lot of our early arrival requests and the appointments piece. And then I do all of those kind of like logistical move-in bins and getting staff trained and routes and all that kind of stuff. And so we got a pretty good second hand now. We've been doing it for a few years together, which is lovely. But I mean, I think if you, and really, of course, it's going to depend on your campus. The budget's going to depend, right? And how big of a deal move-in is for your whole campus is something that might take time. When I started here in 2018, it was not a campus-wide thing, despite us at that point being, I want to say 7,000 beds maybe at that point. Now we're just under 9,000. And so we've built quite a few things, but it was really like, oh, move-in's happening. We didn't know. And we're like, well, it's big. There's a lot of us here and you're in the way. And so I think it has been a climb to get to where we are in terms of having like the president's office down, really understand and buy into like, this is a campus-wide thing that everybody needs to like at least know about so that you're not in the middle of it. And hopefully buy into and get excited about. And so our communications really does a lot in terms of marketing. I mean, we have a website, we build out interactive maps. I mean, there's a lot of pieces to try to give as much information as possible to students, and let's be honest, parents and families that are helping them. And it will never be enough communication, right? People will still get confused. They will still like listen to a mom from 4 years ago that had a totally different route and do that and then get lost and get frustrated. And that's okay, right? We understand emotions are high on move-in day. And so we just kind of work within that. But we do Facebook Lives on our parent pages. We work with our family and parent programs a lot to like push some of this information out as well. So it is, look at my boss being so nice. Thank you. And we do like news stories the morning of, and that's where my lovely associate director for communications comes in because she gets up at dawn and is on the news and always graciously offers that to me and I politely decline. But she does a lot of news stories, like so that the community of Baton Rouge also knows, hey, move-in's happening. So maybe this isn't the weekend that you're going to go for your jog on the levee, because we're right off of the river where we like do our load in. And so it is a lot of like very carefully timed communications. And we try to make it fun, right? We'll send out a reminder postcard that has a sticker pack included. And so maybe they're more likely to read it because there's some laptop stickers in there, you know, things like that. And so they do a really great job. Everything is very branded. We have fence wrappings and giant flags, all with purple tiger stripes, and building everything. I mean, we want you to feel, even though in this giant gravel lot for staging, that you are at LSU. You can see the stadium. It's a pretty magnificent kind of scene. And so it's a huge part of our movement to make it fun and engaging and exciting, and not just the super stressful, I'm waiting in line kind of thing. We're not quite at Disney level of line management, but that's kind of our intent, is right. So there's stuff to do so that you're not realizing you've been waiting in line for a little bit of time. Because there's, you can't move that many people through what used to be a small college town campus and is now a pretty significant size one. So.
I'll just echo what Kate said about communication. I think it's really important to have solid communication, and maybe, like for us, having communication coming from one source rather than like several different sources to help mainstream that, so that it's reliable and it's consistent, and things like that. Because if students are calling another office to find this out, they might tell them what they remember from their experience or something. So it can get, a lot of lines crossed. So that's where the marketing and communication piece can be really helpful, of just mainstreaming that information for students. Because I was just thinking when you said it as well, Kate, people are still going to get lost and get frustrated, and that's going to ruin their move-in experience for them personally, right? Because they got lost. But overall, the student probably was satisfied with how it went and was amazed. But that parent's going to remember the one thing of, I went left when I should have gone right. And that, that's, that human error. It's what we do. But we can't fix that. But all we can do is make sure that we provide the information for them, and that it's upfront, and they're getting the same information across the board. So, email blasts, social media posts. We also do Facebook Lives. Our assignments team handles all of that, things like that. And then definitely working with our PD department to make sure that we have traffic under control, and that we're talking about that and considering other things that are going on in the city that weekend. Again, we're also a small town for a capital city, but it kind of, there's a lot going on. And when we have two other institutions close by, we have FAMU and our community college right here. So it all is happening at the same time. So there's just a lot of activity all at once. So making sure everybody's aware of important time, or high traffic times and high volume times of when folks will be around, is really important.
Love it, love it. I know we just reserved our mascot for move-in days the other day. I told my kids that was my favorite thing that I did that day. They were not as excited as I was.
Never.
Yeah. I know they're only 4 and 8, but it's still cool. Well, I know that our time is rapidly coming to a close, so I do want to make sure. Are there any questions? We've generated a lot of questions from the network, but are there questions out there for Kate or Lacey that y'all would like to ask?
While you're waiting on those, there is one, I know we talked about creating institutional buy-in for move-in day. And one thing I forgot to mention is we have a great division that has been, happily required to participate for some type of volunteership. But we try to make that fun too. And we do a big pep rally during RA training to go over moving with the RAs, but we also bring in all of those divisional and campus volunteers. And we throw stuff in the audience, we always throw giveaway, we make it as fun as possible. Last year we bought these cool battery operated neck fans, so they get some item of swag too when they're out there. And so it hopefully makes the 1.5 to 2 hour shift in the middle of a white gravel lot in Louisiana in August a fun story, right, to tell. And so just trying to lighten it up a little bit. It's a serious thing to do, but hopefully you're having a good time, and focus on you get to interact with all these lovely students and parents and get them excited, and there are some really cool moments that have happened from that. So that's been helpful, and people love free stuff, especially when you don't work in housing, because you're not used to getting a bunch of free stuff like that. So that's an easy, a low-hanging fruit for us to create some buy-in.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's great. So Kate or Lacey, just to kind of start to wrap us up at this point, I know we've still got a little bit of time, so if the questions come up, friends, please feel free to ask them. But Lacey or Kate, can you talk a little bit about like how can staff just create success on their campuses, kind of regardless of their role or their influence in their department? How can they help to create success over the summer months for their departments, their students, their guests? This was not a planned question, sorry. Kind of our final thoughts, I guess, about summer operations.
You got an idea, Lacey?
I'm thinking, but if you had one to go, I will gladly let you go first.
Okay, so my gut impulse was exposure, right? Of allowing, and an in-hall staff for sure, but even like some of your assistant directors, right? Like allowing them behind the curtain a little bit more, and exposing them to some of those pieces. I talked earlier about we have like summer collaterals or opportunities where folks are working in different units. And then also we have functional assistant and associate directors at LSU. So I have 2 staff who will work with me on operations and onboarding things for the summer. Right. And so they get to, even if it's just me externally processing for 20 minutes, they're going to get a peek behind like what all goes into planning our new pro staff essentials training week. Right. And so because they just go through it, right? And they're like, oh, cool, there was this, but like now that they know the intentionality behind it, they engage in it differently, you know, now when they're in that room with their peers and now they're at pro staff training and they understand like what it took to organize that meal for 40 people with 8 different dietary restrictions, right? Like they get that piece. And then that builds advocates for you and your team and builds their skills so that when they go for that next level position, they understand a little bit, you know, behind that. And so that's not just internal stuff, but my folks that are going to work with facilities and housing this summer, they are always so much better at key audits and lock changes in the academic year after they've worked with that department in the summer. They've built relationships with their maintenance of facilities and custodial staff members that carry into the summer. So it's not just about creating successful moments in the summer and learning, but that learning and that operation continues into the academic year and makes them better at their jobs and better advocates for their partners that are a part of producing that great experience for students. And so it's really cool to see those wheels turn and click for folks. And so that's what I would say. I would say how you can create that success is exposing folks to that. So we have the summer conferences meeting every week with those particular partners, but then we still have like a summer res ed staff meeting and everybody comes regardless of what unit they're working in and they give an update on that unit, right? This is what housing is doing this week. This is what assignments is up to this week. And so then they kind of get a little bit more insight because we don't have departmental wide meetings. That would be nuts every week. And so, but it kind of gives people a little peekaboo into those spaces so they understand the interworkings of everybody working together for the same goal. So it's pretty cool.
I would echo what Kate said, but also I guess in my head initially, exposure was a good word for that and how to get that out there. Communication also came to mind for me as well, but more so in the background with communicating with our facilities custodial staff. I feel like while our housing staff on either side of the res life side or the housing, they all are very well immersed, you know, and I think because I work with facilities and custodial so much closer than I would like our coordinator staff, you know, they're on the other side of the hall, if you will, that kind of thing. But I am more closely connected personally with our facilities and custodial in the realm of work. So communication is huge for them, especially because they're not under our purview, you know, that we have to communicate with them. And then, like I said, having those folks that have been here for a while that understand it and get it, when they have that buy-in, because I did see the question about buy-in with campus facilities and staff with summer conferences, when staff that's already been here for a long time has that buy-in, and if they're still, you know, they understand and they are still excited about it as well, but understanding the pressure and the stress that might come from preparing for that, then their staff is more likely to follow suit. As you know, it's kind of how we're mirroring that for our student staff as well. If we're not excited about it, they're not going to get excited about it. And if they're not understanding what's going on, then if we're not understanding fully, then they won't, that kind of thing. So being confident that, you know, this is what we're doing and, you know, making sure everybody's on the same page is really huge. You know, things like that. we meet weekly, like much like with your staff, we also meet weekly with our facilities folks and making sure that custodial and facility are there. And that anytime there's a change or, you know, we have to pivot and think of something different last minute, that they are involved in that process of why and how we're changing things. A good example I have for that is last year, right after closing, we had a situation where some of our halls were tested for radon, and some of our numbers came back to not be in a range that people were comfortable with. They weren't super, super high, but they were in a range in which we needed some mitigation to happen. Well, that impacted about 6 or 7 buildings that were slated to be both summer school and summer conferences that were going to be opening in 14 days. So we had to quickly turn that around and say, okay, now these buildings are going to be summer school. These buildings are going to be for conferences. We had to call clients and say we had to change this, but we needed facilities to help us with that so that their staff, you know, in that moment, it was, why are we focusing on a building that's closed and cleaning it now in May if we don't need it until August? We need, you know, that kind of communication thing. So that's why it's really important, I think, to have facilities on board. And then of course, it never hurts to have your friends at your PD on board, because they can help mitigate, you know, traffic and expectations and things when it comes to contractors and things like that as well. So randomly, I just like to throw PD in there because I enjoy working with our police department. So, you know, it's always good to have them in your back pocket.
And for the facility stuff, you know, are they always going to be super pumped about all of it? No, nope. Right. Like it's, there are certain units, and I would say operations is one where the summer is actually your busier time, like ops and facilities, because you're trying to play catch up from all the stuff throughout the year that you couldn't do, right? When you had all these people kind of in there. And so, like I try, particularly for move-in, which is where I work with our warehouse a lot in terms of storage and getting, you know, everything delivered out to the lots, we can set it up and things like that. And so I'm out in the warehouse pretty often, like building those relationships, chatting in with those folks, and making sure that the first time they don't hear from me is only every summer when I need something for a move-in day. With that, we've built that relationship. And so when you have a stronger relationship with folks, it affords more grace for things, right? And I try to forecast out pretty far in advance and making sure that I'm keeping their supervisors on that communication too. So, hey, in 2 months from now, here's my plan for having our campus cruisers delivered, and when we're going to need to go to each hall and get them delivered. And I scheduled RA training to make sure all the RAs are in the building so they can help me get those off of the truck, right? And so it's about kind of setting all those things up, like I said at the beginning, so that everyone can be successful in their roles in it, because the process has been set up to where they don't have to think about those details. They just need to be there and do the thing. And so I have found that to really find positive feedback from my facilities folks when I'm able to give them information as in advance and then just check back in a little closer to the date versus, hey, I know you probably had plans for next week and I'm ruining them all. And a little couple of breakfast sandwiches when you're up delivering stuff at 7 a.m. doesn't hurt. So
I was just thinking about the donuts I'm about to bring in next week for all of our staff as we do our quick turn. So I'm glad I'm not the only human who brings in food for our team members. Awesome. Love this. This has been so great. Thank you both so much for sharing all this great information. I know that I've learned a lot. I took a whole lot of notes as well. So Kate and Lacey might be getting some follow-up questions from me about some of their processes. There's lots of great stuff in the chat that I wanted to make sure folks had been seeing. Deanna shared a couple of awesome things, and I'll let you unmute and talk a little bit about it here, Deanna, as well, but some great things for our network, and then some shameless plugs about some vendors we use and some presentations happening in Portland this summer as well. So Deanna, you want to help get us wrapped up?
Sure thing. Lacey, Kate, thank you both again for making time to share. For those who are joining us, thank you for being present with us. As I'm sharing, I will be copying and pasting again, but the next time we will be connecting is the 10th of May. And it is just an open meeting where we informally check in, no agenda. It's what's on your mind and you letting us know how we can better support you and serve you while we share like what we have going on and some things that we're planning to do. Always looking to recruit members who are willing to help with the behind the scenes to continue our virtual roundtables, provide opportunities to network and connect if you want to present or do poster sessions, research symposiums, all the things. We are here for you all. So make the time, tell a friend to also come and join as well. Also, we always want to know how we're doing. So I'm dropping this plug in where we just ask you to let us know what content are you interested in for the future? What are some things we should be paying attention to? Because we know a lot is happening within our profession. And last but not least, for those who are looking to get connected and or have additional questions that you want to present to Michelle and I, the first initiative is a self-guided mentor-mentee match initiative where you choose your adventure. We don't pair you with someone. We allow you to read about them to see who you resonate the most with if you want to be a mentor and or mentee. And it is a living, breathing document. So you'll have plenty opportunity to go in whenever you want, as well as share with others to get connected. And then here's our Gmail account that allows you to just email us individuals. We should be giving flowers, folks that can serve as panelists, moderators, or just up and coming grads and entry-level individuals that we can connect with and get them grafted in the work that we are doing. But thank y'all for allowing me to just kind of flood the inbox, copy and paste as you go, and please share out within your networks so that we can continue to do great work and make sure what we are focused on and doing is relevant to where we are in our profession. Michelle, was there anything else before we called it a great day? Excellent. Thank you all again for your time. Continue to make it a great day, and please do not be strangers. So reach out to us and just let us know what you need and how we can continue to support you. Bye, friends.
Bye, thank y'all. Happy closing.
Yes, happy closing indeed.